Etsy has over 6 million sellers on the platform with about 400 million visitors to the platform each month. So, as a seller, how do you get started and how do you get seen? These are some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about with my guest today, Dylan Jahraus, on today's episode of Start, Scale, Succeed. Dylan, thank you so much for joining me today, all the way from San Diego. You're a multi six figure seller on Etsy. You also coach and help people grow their Etsy business. But before we dive into the questions, how did you start on Etsy? What made you choose that as a platform? What's your background?
Well, thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm really excited to be here, and we have very similar backgrounds. I guess my career really started, or my interest in fashion and business really started in college. I did do a program at the London College of Fashion. Actually, yeah, in buying and product development. So was over in your neck of the woods for a little bit and then went into fashion journalism, really quickly realized that's not for me. And then started working for some big companies, Zappos. They're here in the US, they're owned by Amazon, and then Zulily, which is a flash sale model. So basically, did that right out of college. And then I married someone in the military. You move a lot and it's hard to climb the corporate ladder. So I was doing all these side hustles while I was job searching, and Etsy was one of them. I just threw something up on Etsy from my wedding. It was a flower letter, like with fake flowers on it with your initial. And it was from our wedding. A couple months later, it sold. And I was like, wow, I could just apply these corporate e commerce principles to Etsy. And it really took off. So we're doing over $50,000 a month at one point and ended up exiting that business just 2 months ago.
Wow. And did you sell
Yeah.
that business?
Yes, we sold it. That was a big part of what we'd been thinking about the last few years because we did expand onto Amazon and Shopify. So it worked out really well. And actually, we sold it to one of my students in my
Oh,
coaching
right.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll get to how you help others now and how people can work with you. But what are like I said, there's so many people that are on the platform. So if you are a product business and you want to start on Etsy, what are the things that you need to bear in mind, and what are the kind of, I suppose, the ins and outs of starting with Etsy?
So I would definitely take a look at how established your brand is and how set on maybe a product mix you are. If you have already established all of that, then it's really a positioning play because really Etsy is a search engine and you need to get found by the right people. So how you position your products on Amazon or on Shopify or Walmart, it might be different than how you position it on Etsy because the customers are very different and they're also searching in a different way. So now, if you don't start with a product and maybe you have a concept of a brand, then what we want to do is start with the customer. And Etsy customers are so profitable. They also, I would say, have a different set of expectations than Amazon customers, which is part of what makes them so profitable. And I would start with the customer, really identify who they are, what they spend their money on. We ideally are selling to people who value their time more than money. So maybe they have higher discretionary income, and then we build the product mix around them. So it depends on what stage you're at, but either way, we're really customer centric. Just because the Etsy customer, that's, I would say, one of its biggest competitive advantages to other platforms.
And so there's a lot of people that are selling products on there. There's a lot of competition on the platform. How do you stand out and get seen?
Yes. Yes, that's great. It's funny, I just filmed a summit presentation on this last night. So there's really a few things that you need to do. Number one is your SEO. You can rank on the first 3 pages of search results with your SEO alone. That can get you to the first 3 pages if you do that correctly. But with Etsy, there's so many places to have SEO, and most people are only doing about 10% of what they need to be doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is your thumbnails, your main image on your product. In order to stand out in search, it does have to be elevated with its branding, and I do recommend outsourcing that if that's not a strength of yours. And then pricing, right? If you have no track record and no social proof, we don't want to be pricing at 20% higher than the market leader. So at least a temporary competitive price. And then ultimately, driving some external traffic can really help you stand out. Because with Etsy and the algorithm, part of the ranking is with your order velocity. So the number of sales that happen in a period of time. So basically, let's say the first listing on the page of search results has 20 sales a day. We need you to get to 25 sales a day. I don't care honestly what price point that's at, but we need you to outpace their order
Yeah.
volume in order to rank higher.
And are you able to, when you go on Etsy, is it quite easy to research the platform and see, what the best sellers are that are ranking on the platform for and who's doing really well? Like, can you use it as a tool to get the data to be able to then apply it to your own brand?
This is a very interesting difference between Amazon and Etsy. For example, the search data is private. So customer search data is private. So any tools you see out there they give estimates of search data, but they are pulling that from third-party data providers. So I would say that's the tricky part is you're not going to be seeing the exact traffic behind specific keywords. However, I would say that just means you're going to compete in different ways and be resourceful in different ways.
What are in terms of some of the logistical things, in terms of commission rates with Etsy and get you started, what are the things people should be aware of from, I suppose, particularly from a pricing point of view when you're pricing your products?
Yes. So I would say, I mean, the cost to get on Etsy, it depends on where you're located. It's around $10 to $20. They've been testing some pricing to set up your account. It used to be free, which I actually think this is a great thing that they're charging because it is preventing a lot of those kind of spam bot accounts from flooding the
Mhm.
marketplace. So that's like the initial upfront cost. And then in terms of the cut they take, it's actually less than Amazon. Now, it does depend if you have off-site ads turned on or off. So that is where Etsy is basically bidding on terms for you to show up in Google. So they will make the choice on that, and you can just turn it off or on. It does add a significant percentage. There's different tiers for that depending on if you're grandfathered in. But let's say we're not considering offsite ads, we're just doing just Etsy. So you're
Yeah.
looking at so you're looking around 9 to 10% plus, any currency conversion things that could also play a role. But ultimately, it's significantly less than Amazon, and you
Yeah.
don't have to do PPC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pay per click. And what are the main mistakes that you see people making on Etsy?
Oh man, there's so many. It's hard. I would say that, I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes new shops make is they start with a product and they hope someone wants it. And they start with an idea of things, it's usually things they like and they think are cute, and they hope someone else likes it too. But that's not a plan. And really, we're not reverse engineering our goals here. We want to know who we're selling to and then reverse engineer, okay, what products are we going to sell to them? So I would say picking products and hoping someone wants them, that's the biggest miss for new shops. And then with existing shops, I think that a lot of existing shops, like we saw the big kind of ecom boom 2020, 2021, and it was easy. It was so easy to sell on Etsy. You could put up like one or two photos and your stuff would be selling. Now, though, it's a completely different competitive landscape, and you have to do different things to get sales now. So, relying on what works for you in 2020, 2021, it's not going to work in 2025. Yeah.
And what are the things that are working for people like this year, like 2024? What do you think people need to do to change to
Mhm.
to see those sales coming in?
So I think some of the most profitable customers, they really value their time more than money, and they appreciate and they value a more curated experience versus a flea market style experience where that was a strategy, I would say, a couple of years ago on Etsy. Just put up, you know, basically thousands of listings. And the more listings, the more money you'll make. Now we're not seeing that. You can have less than 30 listings and make over 20 grand a month. It's
Yeah,
really, I would say, about quality of listings, and that's going to help your conversion rate in your shop, which helps the ranking of every single listing. So
and
a
drives more
curated
traffic.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah, and then it'll drive more traffic to you as well. And
exactly.
for those that are there any in terms of the Etsy customer then, trend leaders or more trend followers?
Oh, I love this question because Etsy is a very different type of platform. A lot of people think, oh, I'll look to see what's selling on Etsy and what's trending on Etsy, and then I'll sell that. Well, Etsy is one of the last places to get trends. So you're like 6 to 8 months too late by the time something's working well on Etsy. Especially in the US, we see my shop was kind of a market leader with trends in the nursery decor space. And we would see, definitely early adopters on the coast. So, like, New York, California. And then 4 to 7 years later, that product that was trending 4 to 7 years ago on the coast, now we're seeing that in the middle of America and in the Midwest. Like, so you see waves of customers from different locations, but you can definitely see trends do drag on a long time because I mean it's e-commerce and people are from all over.
Yeah. So something that might be working really well on TikTok or being really strong on Pinterest, it might not have hit Etsy yet. So if you were looking for ideas, would in terms of a product point of view, if you were starting out now and you're looking for ideas from a product point of view, where would be the platforms that you would go to do your, other than like making sure that you know who your customer is and who you want to target, where would be the platforms that you would be looking at for ideas?
Absolutely. And this is something we teach as well is how to find those trends that have not made it to Etsy. One, definitely TikTok and Pinterest. Those two for sure. But another one is actually it really helps you bridge that gap between what the trend is and who the customer is for it. And it's with influencers. So
Hmm.
influencers, because it's actually kind of showing you the customer and the trend so clearly in such a visual way uh, that it's easy to kind of position it for the customer you want to sell to. Yeah,
And then if we go back to like some of those mistakes that you see people doing, particularly looking at those that are have been on Etsy for a while, but started to see a real slowdown in their sales.
yeah,
What are what are the things that those particular accounts can do to jumpstart their account again?
totally. Yeah, that's great. That's a lot of what we see in people who come asking for help. They've seen maybe a 60 to 80% decrease over the last couple of years, and they're like, what happened? This was working so great. I'm not doing anything different. And I say, exactly, you're not doing anything different. Um, First of all, like SEO, really the expectations for SEO have changed significantly on Etsy from like 2017 to now. Just different strategies. So if you haven't been updating your listings, especially the ones that aren't selling, you're it's like not updating your computer, the iOS. It's like we are
Yeah,
operating
yeah.
on an old system. Yeah. Elevated branding. That's another thing. Using branding from 2017 because it worked for you then. That's a huge miss. And not staying up with that. Also, if your bestseller, let's say 2 years ago, is still your bestseller now, I would say we've left some major opportunity on the table. That's like a red flag to me. If they say, yeah, this has been my bestseller for 5 years, I say, wow, you have not been iterating and innovating based on that to come up with something that does even, that's even bigger and better. So that's another red flag.
Back to your point that they may have too many listings, so it looks a bit of it might be a bit of a jumbled mess. That if the customer is now looking for something more curated, and they're just then not keeping up with the trends as well, or not, like you say, not introducing that kind of thing that's new. I was recently talking to a client of mine who, said, oh, they were doing lots of great things with Etsy, but then it just started to. They made the mistake of selling. And as far as I know, I mean, people are not aware, on Etsy, it has to be your own brand product. You can't resell product. Is that right? In terms of you can't sell other brands, it has to be your brand.
So as of July 9th, there's a new category handpicked by a seller, which really rewards curation. But you have to do it, there's parameters around it. Yeah.
Okay, so you can now. That's great. So you can now do it, because this particular client of mine got kind of, I think, banned, not banned from the site, but they had to make a load of changes, and then they felt that their account didn't recover. But I think that they were just doing then the same kind of thing and didn't revisit it. Like you say, if you always do what you've always done, it starts to just be old news, and then people have moved on. In terms of the the successful types of products that you see,
Mhm.
what would you say are the top three? in terms of product categories that are working?
Yeah. So I would say it's almost like product business models that do really well. And one is that I'm seeing huge increases in is the idea of selling to people who are looking who are maybe more minimalist, but they're looking for an impactful heirloom quality gift. And these are the customers who, instead of buying like a gift box full of 15 things in it for a gift, they want to buy one beautiful piece of pottery or one single statement piece. It's like selling statement pieces that are heirloom quality. We have seen huge growth in that, specifically ceramics and pottery. Also, I would say engraving, anything glass, um, higher quality materials, basically. So that's one area. The second would be personalization. I mean, that's personalized products are always going to do well on Etsy and pretty consistently year round. I would say with personalization, people can tend to end up with a shop with thousands of listings, and maybe 10% of them are really driving things. So still try to curate even when you're doing personalization, and cut the fat. And then let's see, now those are for physical products. I will say with digital products, that is huge. It's also pretty competitive, but combining a service with a digital product is always a great idea. So let's say you sell website templates and you have a service component, and you can charge a lot for this, like a full installation of the website. I paid several $1,000s for mine from Etsy. And that combination of a service, something you're good at, with the digital product is great.
Um, what about running ads, and at what point should you consider running ads? Is there a certain turnover you should be have, or is a certain, should you be trading for a certain amount of months before you decide to run ads, or is it something you should could be looking at from the beginning?
Yes. So I would say it all depends on where you're thinking of running ads. I would rarely ever recommend Etsy ads for anyone. It is like the closest thing to lighting your money on fire from what I've seen. Just the level of control, it's not there. You can't do a max bid, you can't like certain keywords, you can't there's no targeting, there's no retargeting, there's no control. You just click on or off and it
Right.
spends
Okay.
your budget. Yeah, you can't even allocate your budget across or change it across different listings. It will spend it how it wants to. So I would not recommend Etsy ads. If anything, Meta could work. We've been very successful with ads on Meta, but I would say you have to be careful about the products you're putting up. Really consider your margin. And when you're looking at ROAS, don't forget to consider the cost of goods sold. What is the
Yeah.
cost? What is the labor? It's like I spent $10 on ads and I sold two of the products. So I made $10. No, your cost on each was, $5. So you made nothing.
See, with a lot of Etsy sellers, because some will be in the craft business and it's ceramics and that they're not pricing it right before that they start selling. Is that something that you see from a mistake point of view?
Like pricing in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I think especially people who feel like they're artists or they really value and they put a ton of time and maybe a little bit perfectionist about what they do. Sometimes they price way too high and they have no track record or social proof and they're charging way above the market leaders. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes where it's like I'm committed to this 50% margin. I have no sales, but if I sell something, it will be at 50% margin. Like, well, you might never get a sale if you don't, you know, I always say the words, give it away just for the first couple. So you get a couple of reviews. Otherwise, like, where's the trust? How can people, have trust in the product? So I always say give it away for the first couple orders just to get some reviews. But I think when scaling, people can get into this habit of, well, I have to price low because that's how I'm getting my sales. I'm afraid to raise my prices and I'm afraid to disappoint my customers. So I've seen basically both ends of that spectrum.
And what would be your top tips at different stages? So your top tips when you're starting out. I know that we talked about the customer, doing the research, going getting your trend information from other platforms. What other top tips would you say when you're starting on Etsy?
I would say do not overthink your product mix because I guarantee your first 10 products aren't going to be your best sellers 2 years from now. Just, I would say there is a huge opportunity cost to being a perfectionist on this platform because the platform is designed to be giving you fast feedback from customers. You can't get the fast feedback if you are overthinking every little detail. So I always say, like, put the food in the oven before the oven is preheated. Let's just like get the feedback as quickly as possible. It's you're not investing, in a brick and mortar location. This is pretty low risk. Get the
Yeah.
listing up, test quickly. Um, and then don't overprice. That's the other one. Yeah.
And for those that are growing and that are wanting to scale, what would be the top tips that you would say there?
I would say you really need to keep your finger on the pulse with your customer so you can stay ahead of them. Because as soon as you get a customer, right, our goal should be increasing the lifetime value of that customer. How can we serve them for 4 to 7 years? If we don't focus on the LTV, we're just going to be chasing transactions, and that gets really expensive. And it's pretty high risk too. It's much easier to get more out of your current customers than to chase down new ones. So always think about, how can I serve this person in as many areas of their life as possible for at least 4 to 7 years, um, versus, just one transaction at a time. So that's in scaling. Alex Hormozy was a mentor of mine, and he has, really teaches the principles of more, better, new. So doing more of what's working, then making it better. And once you've exhausted those, then focusing on new. And a lot of people who start to get traction, they're just thinking, all right, I'm just going to do a bunch of new things instead of really maximizing what's already working.
In terms of the data that you have of your customer, if you can you contact them directly? Can you see the data other than your sales data?
Mhm.
What can you target them, your customers directly? What are the rules of engagement, I suppose, so that you can take that customer, if you decide to set up your own website, or if you have your own website, that you can target them separately and kind of take them off the Etsy platform and bring
Yes.
them to directly to your website?
Yes. So there are rules around this. I would say rules that are usually not enforced unless you reach out to someone and they raise a red flag to Etsy. But there are rules. You do not own the customer data. Etsy owns it while they provide it to you. So you have their email, you have their address. You don't usually have their phone number unless they sent it to you. But that alone, like, it's tempting, right? To say, I'm going to add these people to my email list. Instead, we really want to do two things. We want to definitely collect their emails. So have an opt-in, whether it be a coupon code or something else. Get their email that way, and then get them to your social media. And we use social media as a bridge then to funnel them to your website. So for me, I was doing 6 figures a month, or not a month, sorry, 6 figures per year on my website without doing any ads. And it was all coming from Etsy. I'd funnel them to social media and then from social media to the website. So that's a great bridge to use.
And how were you funneling them from the Etsy platform, just saying, come and follow me, or this is what we're, you know what I mean? Like, how are you taking them from the Etsy platform to, because when you go on Etsy and you put it in the search bar, you find so many sellers. What was it that you were doing that was making them then go and follow you on Instagram?
This is one of my biggest secrets. It is basically incredible bait, like super strong bait. And for me, that was saying, there's a sneak peek of your order on my Instagram. And
Okay.
that would get them because they're like, I want to see my order, even if it's not personalized, even if it's a digital product, right? Even if it's a print on demand t-shirt, nothing personalized about it, they would want to see that. And I would call them out, Sarah, your order is on its way. And
Okay.
that every customer became a follower.
Great. I'm glad
Yeah.
you've shared that secret. You're doing
the
you're in a
only
secret.
pod I've never shared that on a podcast before.
Glad that you've been able to share it here. And so you have turned over a huge amount on Etsy. You've got so much experience with it now, and you work with people in quite a few different ways. How can people work with you, and where can they find you?
Yeah. So we are easy to get in touch with. I have a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos you can check out as well. It's, all free education there. And then we do provide coaching for about 3,500 sellers right now, where it's unlimited one-on-one coaching. And then you get 5 coaching calls per week. 2 of those every week are with me. So it's very much, I would say, almost a hand-holding process, whether you are a new seller or whether you are doing right now, our top seller is doing 8 million per year. So anywhere in between.
Amazing. God, it is. It's so, the amount, the opportunity that's there,
Yeah.
that I think some people then don't realize, or they're not aware of some of the things that they need to do for it is just, I mean, the opportunity on Etsy. It's not a platform that I've really looked into. It's not a platform because with some of the clients I work with, they're either, a lot of them are resellers or they're more clothing based rather than what I see Etsy is very crafty. I know there's some kind of clothing on it, but it's very much craft type products, isn't it? Really, from what I've seen.
So, with the new categories, especially handpicked by a seller, if you are reselling things, you should absolutely look at Etsy. Even if you only use it just for top of funnel to get people to your website or to your social media, because it is a search engine. It's kind of like being on Pinterest, right? It's a
Yeah.
way for people to find you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And where your social media handle and everything like that, we're going to put that in the show notes and we will, so people can find you there and be able to follow you on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else that you are. But Dylan, thank you so much for sharing your great insights with us today.
Thank you, Nicole. This was really fun.